listen carefully to this candidate because he solves the military helicopters case in a pretty much best way possible. He is not only very good with the calculations, of course, he makes some mistakes because the calculations are really complex, but he's really fast and he corrects himself in time. So you're going to see that this candidate is really good on the quantitative side, but he also is very sharp on the qualitative side. He realizes things that very few other candidates realize. So he sums up a lot of best practices that you should learn from, and he solves this case very well. So he's the best candidate I've interviewed so far with this case. So check it out and listen out carefully.
Okay, so today your client is called BS Systems. They are a defense contractor situated in the US. And they have contacted your company, your consultancy, to advise them in the selection of a location for a new plant. Okay? And this plant is supposed to produce Apache helicopters. You know, those war military helicopters, right? Mm-hmm. Now, 3 sites for this new plant are in consideration: Canada, UK, and the US. In order for you to decide which site to choose, the profit projection for the next 5 years should be calculated.
Sorry, can you repeat the last sentence? I had some troubles.
Sure. In order for you to choose the site mm-hmm. where you're going to build it, one of the most important factors is the financial side of the choice, and the profits for each of those sites for the next 5 years should be calculated.
Okay.
And based on that and other factors, you might take your decision.
Okay, great. And the sites are located either in Canada, US, and
the UK. Canada, the UK, US, okay. And UK. Those are the only 3 sites in consideration. Yeah. Right.
Okay, so if I understood the situation, the client is BS System, a defense contractor in US, who is considering building a new plant to produce Apache helicopters, and they have 3 main options to build one either in Canada or in UK or in US.
Right.
And their main objective is on the financial side, and they want us to help them to make a decision based on the expected profits for each site in the next 5 years.
Right.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask some clarifying questions first, or do you want to see my approach first? Okay, great.
No.
So here, all the options are exclusive, right? So it's either one of them, and
exactly. Only one plant will be built.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And because you mentioned earlier, it's a defense contractor in US. Does it mean it's a US-based company, or that their only customer is US Army?
Very good question. They are a US company, but they already sell to other countries.
Okay. So, And the last question, do they already have a plan for producing Apache helicopters, or?
Very good question again. Yes, they do, and it is already in the US, this factory.
Okay.
Notice here how this candidate tries to understand very well the status quo, the current situation of the client. The question whether they have a plant in the US already is going to be very important for him to understand why expanding a plant in the US, because it already exists, is going to be much cheaper than building another one in the UK or in the US. So you should also try to do that in your cases. Really make sure you understood 100% what the current situation of the client is and what they intend to do.
And to make sure the Apache helicopter, they developed it, right? Or is it a licensed product and everyone can make it?
It's their own. No, it's their own.
Okay, it's their own product. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and do we have any other objectives or internal metrics I should consider in my approach? How fast do they want to make it or build or realize the plan?
That's again a very useful question, not only for this case, but also for many others. You always have to have in mind what the time frame, what the deadline is for the implementation of the solution. So this client here wants to build another factory. So how long are they willing or intending to use this factory for? So you have to have a time frame, because most of the times you'll be confronted with a break-even choice, which one will pay off faster, or from how many years on it will be better to use option A or B. So again, think always in terms of time frame and deadlines.
So all they want you to focus on this 5-year time frame, because that's
okay.
what they consider to be a time frame relevant for them. Since you're asking, another good analysis that you could do or make is a more qualitative pros and cons of the decision. So not only what directly will impact in a money-wise, but also other factors, if you can think of any.
All right, but there is no fixed threshold or any
deadlines. No, there aren't.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Great. So, if you don't mind, I'll take a moment to structure my thoughts.
Sure, do that.
All right. I will suggest a following approach. I would like to first to look at the two components of profits, revenues and cost side. Here, only briefly on the revenues, since just to get a better feeling in terms of how much helicopters are we selling and how much revenue do we turn in. And then to focus on the cost side, because this is in my eyes probably the main separator here for the three options. And here I would like to look at as well as at the variable costs, which might differ due to different supply chains and labor costs and raw material costs maybe. And on the other side, on the fixed costs, which might be the largest part for this side. And this for each of the three options respectively, to get the feeling for the financial side and if we can achieve our goal and how it will look after 5 years. And after that, I will focus a little bit more on the qualitative side, and here basically look at at three main areas at our customers. Where they're located, how will the choice of our site impact our relationship with the customers. Since it's a defense sector, there are a lot of military secrets and a lot of press involved. The second point would be the company. Can we really execute our site and run it in each of the three locations in the same way? And can we handle it from the management side, as well as the financing, depending on the costs? And the third area would be the legal side. I need also to clarify that we are allowed to build helicopters in all the three countries, and that there are no strictly, disclosures or something like that, since it's proprietary and secret military technology.
Okay.
So so if you don't mind, I would like to start with the revenue side and to briefly get a feeling about how much is the revenue for us right now, and what we are expecting for over this 5 years.
Sure. So the revenue right now is not important because we're thinking of this new factory, and so you want to have the revenue for each one of the three possibilities, right?
Yeah, is it different for all of the three possibilities? So are we?
It is, yeah. So as you mentioned, your hypothesis is that the cost will be the main factor that would differ. It is partially true, and the reason is that governments prefer to buy products that are built in their own country.
Oh, okay.
So there's a bit of protectionism here. And I can show you what are the willingness to spend the defense budgets from these three countries if we are to build a factory there. So as you can see, if we build a factory in the US, we will be able to have 25% of the defense budget from the US, but nothing from the UK and Canada. So they are not going to buy from our client if the client builds the factory in the US. And so on. And the same for UK and Canada. You can read the table. So the revenues will change for depending on the site location.
Yeah, then I will definitely consider it, include it into my consideration. If I look at the table, I can see choosing the first option, building the plant in US, will lead us with 25 billion revenues a year, since we only capture 25% of the US budget. Choosing the second options will generate again 25 billion from the US government, and additional 10 billion from the UK government, which is 35 billion in total. And the third option in Canada will as well give us 25 billion from the US, plus additional 7.5 billion from the UK, which is in total 32.5 billion. Okay, so on the revenue side, the second option will definitely bring the most revenue in, since the UK budget is larger than the Canadian, and we will get half of it, and our US budget is indifferent of all the three options.
Good.
Okay. Do we know about the some information about the quantity of helicopters we are producing right now, and we are expecting to sell. I'm asking this considering since we already run a plant.
Mm-hmm.
I would just want to make sure that we really need this additional capacity, or if we already can produce it maybe in our own old plant, just to get information or insight into that.
See what a good point that this candidate just brought up here. What's the necessity of building a new factory if we can already sell helicopters or airplanes or whatever products we're building with our own remaining capacity? So of course it's likely that the client already knows that, and that they already did a calculation and saw that they need to build another plant because they don't have enough capacity. But this candidate here is not making implicit assumptions. He wants to make sure he understood, okay, we need to build a plant because our capacity left is not enough to serve this new market that we're gonna sell to.
Very good question. So the capacity is almost exhausted right now, so we don't have any extra capacity. But interesting point you brought up, how many helicopters we would be able to produce. So the if we started in the US, then it would be the assembly line would be able to produce 250 helicopters annually.
Okay.
And if we produce it in the UK or in Canada, they would be able to produce a bit more, 350 helicopters per year.
Okay. And
actually, the plant, if we build it in the US, it wouldn't be a whole new plant. Instead, it would be an extension of the existing assembly line, right?
Okay, yeah, now I see. And in the other two options, we will build a new plant and still keep our old one running.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Great. And do you know, or do you have the data about the price of a Apache helicopter? Is it?
Yes, we do. It's
yeah.
$100 million.
Okay, no matter to which country, and
it doesn't matter. No.
Okay, 100 million. So knowing that, I can calculate the demand for helicopters in all of the three scenarios, and then I want to compare it to our capacity and the
supply, right?
expected revenues at the end.
Very good point brought again by this candidate. He understood that the fact that the governments are willing to spend part of their budgets with BS systems does not mean that we're going to make this revenue as well. Why? Because we need to be able to produce the helicopters that they are willing to buy. And in order to know if we're able, with the capacity that we're going to have building those new factories, if we're able to sell those helicopters, the key variable here is to know the price of each helicopter. So knowing the price, he can know how much we can sell, 20, 200 helicopters for. Then he can understand if the capacity is enough to supply the demand of the governments. Now, it would have been even better if he mentioned why he wanted the price for before asking for the price.
Okay, good. What can you conclude out of this comparison once you're ready?
So I'll quickly just divide the revenue, the spending of the government by the 100 million, and then I will get the expected helicopter amount.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, now, if I guess that in the first case we would sell 250 helicopters to the US government.
Mm-hmm.
In the second case, if we take into consideration UK as well, we will sell 350 helicopters, which is still within our capacity. And with Canada, we will sell 325 helicopters, which is as well within our capacity, but it gives us an extra buffer for our plan, so it's not running at max capacity like it would in the UK case. But this I will consider in my qualitative analysis later on. So here I can be sure that at least all of the demand can be matched with the three options.
Okay, great.
Okay, so knowing that, if you don't mind, I would like to switch now to the cost side and to consider the differences between the three options regarding the cost.
Here is another best practice that you can learn from this candidate. Notice how well he closes his analysis on the revenue and the demand side, and now introduces the switch on his framework to the cost side. So for an interviewer, as you see, it's very easy to follow where this candidate is heading to. So that's something you should learn from this candidate.
Sure. Let's do that.
And so I would like to segment the costs here into more detail for the three options. And do you have any data on that?
Yes, we do. So what types of costs do you think are involved? Not exactly cost blocks like material, labor, or whatever. What are the main costs?
I would think that the main costs are the operational costs producing the Apaches, which might differ, and of course the costs for building the plant.
The one-off cost investment.
One-off cost, yeah. So like, actually, it would be the fixed cost here to build the plant, and then the operational costs to run the plant and to build the helicopters.
Now, please be very careful with how you categorize costs. So this candidate here says that investment costs are fixed costs, which is not really true. So costs are mainly divided into one-off costs or investment costs and recurring costs. Below recurring costs, so recurring costs are subdivided into fixed costs and variable costs. So fixed costs are costs that happen or that occur every month or every year, so they're recurring, and fixed regardless of the amount of units sold. Variable costs, on the other hand, are dependent on the amount of helicopters or whatever units sold. So again, there are one-off costs, investment costs, and recurring costs. And recurring costs are subdivided or are segmented into fixed and variable costs. Do not mix up fixed with one-off costs.
Okay, so we do have data on that, and I'm sharing with you right now. So the initial setup cost is, as I said, in the US lower. Why is it lower?
Sorry. Okay. Now I see the table. Okay. The initial costs in the US are lower because we already have the facilities, and we only have to adjust them and expand them. And I'm not sure. Are we owning here in the US the land, for example?
Exactly. So we already do have the space, the land plot for extending the assembly line. That's why it will then cost less.
Now see here, this candidate uses the knowledge or the information that he gathered by asking the intelligent question whether we already have plants in the US. For many people, the fact that if the expansion or a new plant in the US is much cheaper beats them, so they don't know why this happened. And this candidate straight away understands why this expansion or this new plan in the US is cheaper.
So you're right. That's why. And in the UK and in Canada, will need to start from scratch. Great. So there is one extra complication here.
Yes.
Which is that if the client builds the plant in the UK or in Canada, if they want to sell to the US, they need to pay $10 million per helicopter for certifying them to fly in the US. So this is a special regulation that needs to be a certification in the US for foreign helicopters. So
okay,
10
and
million
if
more.
I understood you correctly, this extra costs or fees aren't included in the variable cost.
They aren't. There is an extra 10 million.
Okay.
Just for certifying the helicopter.
Yes.
The
yes.
quality,
Okay.
the safety, etc. Yep.
Okay. On the helicopter basis, so it's not
per helicopter 10 million, right?
Okay. Yes. Great. Thank you. All right. So if I use this data for the costs, and I would like to calculate the total amount of costs regarding our demand.
Sure.
For all the three cases.
Mm-hmm.
So in the US, it would be 500 million startup or setup costs,
mm-hmm.
Plus 100 million costs each year, plus 250 helicopters time 10 million. Also each year per helicopter. So am I to clarify that? Am I right in the assumption that the spending budgets are on a yearly basis, and can I assume that they stay stable over the 5 years period?
Yes, you can. That's a good assumption too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, this candidate shows a best practice here. He does not make implicit assumptions, so he does not assume things without explicitly telling his interviewer. So here it's very important to make sure that the amount that the government spend is not going to change in the next 5 years, because here it's only what they're going to be per year. So what if they shut down their operations or stop buying after 2 years? You don't know that unless you ask. And that's something not many candidates have done with me in this case. So another point to this candidate.
So knowing that, I have to multiply the helicopter-related costs times 5, since we are looking over a 5-year period.
Right.
And I get in total $13.5 billion in costs. If I here the assumption is I will write off or depreciate all the setup costs only over this 5-year period.
Okay.
So if I think since we are looking over only for the 5-year period, mm-hmm. It may be a reasonable assumption, since the defensive market is really changing, and it's hard to assume or to imagine for how long exactly we'll operate the plant. Mm-hmm. So is it okay if I assume here that we depreciate the whole setup cost over 5 years? Okay.
Sure. So how much did you get to? 13?
I got 500 million. In total, I got 13.5 billion.
Okay, good.
So it's the fixed cost plus the variable costs of the helicopter over 5 years and the initial setup cost.
Okay, great.
So
that's US. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in it's US. I'll quickly calculate the other two options. So it's 1,000 close. So I get 46.75 billion US dollar for UK.
Mm-hmm.
Since this candidate has been so good throughout the case, I was really worried that we at PrepLounge had made a mistake in this calculation here, but I verified and it's actually 45.75 billion. So this candidate just made a mistake by 1 billion, which is not a big deal because he showed the whole time very good calculation skills. You're going to see that for Canada he also makes a slight mistake because he considers the wrong variable costs. But overall, this candidate has very good calculation skills, and he has actually a maths background, so that explains a lot.
Here I consider this 10 extra fees you told me and the data from the table. And for Canada, I will get I'll get 43 billion point 625 US dollar
For Canada.
for Canada. Yeah.
Are you sure? Because
No, sorry. I overlooked the fact that the variable costs are also higher by 5 million. Sorry.
No worries.
So, do you want me to walk you through this calculation, or because it's
Would be great.
kind of...
Yeah, you can do that quickly.
Here the candidate realizes that he could do the calculations out loud, and that's always better. It's always better if you walk your interviewer through all the steps of the analysis or calculation you're doing instead of just keeping silent for a minute or so. So try to not lose this connection with your interviewer by being silent for so long. So if you can, do your calculations out loud. It's always better.
So
Okay, I could do... Oh, yeah, of course. So I thought it is actually the same as I did with the US. So it's the initial setup cost of 1,500 million,
right,
plus the 100 million fixed costs, which are accrue yearly, plus 325 helicopters we are supposed to sell each year, and this times this 20 plus 10, so 30 million on cost per helicopter, and this over 5 years period. So in total I get 5. So I get in total times 5, 1,500 million plus 5,375 million, which is 6, 8. Which is $68.75 billion.
68?
Yeah.
Okay. Now it sounds a bit too much for me. So 1.5 plus 5, 500, so 2 billion.
Yeah.
Plus 20 times 325 helicopters, is it?
Plus 30 times, since we're paying this extra fee. So we have variable cost of 20, additional
times 30.
Import costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So 30 times 225. That's 1,025.
Yeah. No, it's
per year. I mean. It's 975.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Times
5.
5. Yeah.
So it's
times 10, right?
875.
So it's 900 times 10 million. So it's 9 billion per year. 975 billion per year.
Yeah. So
okay. So times 5, that's about 50.
Yeah, sorry, you're right. So it's at 48.75.
Right.
Exactly.
Times the 2 billion. Yeah.
Yeah, plus 2 billion. So it's 50.75 billion.
Right.
This candidate falls in a trap that a lot of cases have. So if you analyze again the costs and the revenues of Canada, you're going to see that the revenues are lower than the UK and the costs are higher than in the UK. So he really didn't have to do any calculations whatsoever for Canada, because he knows already that's going to be a worse option financially. But since he's so used to calculations and he's so good at it, he's a math student, he is tempted to do it. So that's a feedback for you as well. Before you start doing calculations, making calculations, think if there's not a more intelligent way to avoid the calculations without losing the sense of the case. So think of an intelligent way to simplify your life, and he would have saved a couple of minutes here if he didn't have to do the calculation for Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I got off with additional extra fees in my calculation.
Sure. So So what can you conclude out of that?
Yeah. So looking at that, our operating costs our lifetime costs over this 5-year period would be the largest in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we are producing less helicopters if we would produce in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, because we already have a plant in US, the costs in US are the lowest.
Yeah.
So here now I will quickly calculate the expected returns over this lifetime. Okay. So to be able to get an answer on the financial side.
Okay.
And then I would like to look deeper on the qualitative aspect.
Yeah, for that we're not gonna have a lot of time for the quantitative part, but of course the client would appreciate much if you could do that.
Yeah. So for the US option, we had 25 billion in revenues minus 13.5 billion in costs, which would lead to a profit of 11.5 billion over this lifetime. Here, I neglect the discounting. Of course, the profits or the revenues we gain over the time, there should be discounted here, but the same applies to the costs. So if it's okay, I will neglect it.
So what did you just do?
I subtracted the expected costs of 13.5 billion from 25. Oh, sorry, it's a yearly, yearly revenue.
Right.
So I had to multiply it by 5, which leads to 125 billion. And then we have expected profit of 111.5 billion.
Right.
So for the UK, we had a yearly revenue of 35 billion times 5, which is 175 billion minus the costs of 46.75, which will end up in 128.25 billion. And for Canada, we have 32.5 times 5, which is 162.5 billion on the revenues, minus the costs of 50.75, which is 111.75 billion.
Okay.
Yes. So here we see that the largest profit would be going for the second option, building the plant in UK, which is larger by about 16 billion compared to the second best option, Canada, which is almost close the same like the first options, the US.
Okay. So other, before you give your recommendation, because the CEO is coming, which other parameters or factors would you consider for the decision? What other important aspects are there to be taken into account? Which other factors? Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Yeah, so which other factors are important for your decision?
Here this candidate stands out again. He shows he's not only good on the quantitative side, not only good at making fast calculations, but also on the qualitative side. He has very good ideas and very interesting remarks. For instance, something that none of the candidates I've interviewed, about more than 10 candidates on this case here, none of them realized that the language of those three countries is very similar. It's actually the same, it's English. So he realized this point and mentioned that it wouldn't be that much of a problem because the culture and the language is very similar. Very interesting qualitative remark of this candidate.
Yeah, so for the decision, I would recommend to look deeper at the execution side of this plan. So here, related to the company, our expertise, here it looks like there shouldn't be a lot of problems regarding the language or the culture, since the countries are similar, but still there might be differences between in the labor and basically in the supply chain for the products. So this is a point to look at it. The second would be also regarding the company is how to deal with the already existing plant if we're not going for the US options. That might include either costs or lead to some inefficiencies. And the third point regarding the company would be the capacity exposure in the second options, for example, and that there are no buffer anymore left if we're going for from the monetary point of view, the best option, the UK, that there are no buffer. And another point or in other areas I would like to look at are the customers, since we are then dealing with different type of governments and so on, and they're also maybe paying with different currencies. So we have additional risks on the customer side. And it depends on the contracts, how sustainable or how reliable are this market size and market shares assumptions we met for the calculations. So I would suggest to look deeper at the customers. And the last area would be all the legal aspects. You mentioned there are this 10 million extra fees for licensing and importing the helicopter. Are there any other regulatory issues we should look at, as well as on the importing side, but also at the contract side to our government, if there are some disclosures or exclusivities and things like that. So these are the three main areas I would like to look at before I make a final decision.
Okay, great. So interesting. All the qualitative aspects are really relevant. So the CEO has just arrived. Why don't you take a second to prepare your conclusion to them?
Yes, sure, of course. Okay, so after the initial analysis, I would like to recommend to look into more details for the UK options, since it will generate the most profit in this one. Here I would recommend or really emphasize to look deeper and some qualitative points regarding the company. I would point out here that we are running on the max capacity and don't have any buffer. Here we have the advantage dealing with two customers, not only with one, so we are more diverse, but this will also bring new challenges which we have to analyze further regarding the government and the customer structure, as well as on the legal side. However, if depending on the quality analysis, I would then suggest maybe considering the second best options staying in the US. Here we have the advantage that we can utilize our existing plant, but the disadvantage that we only have one customer, the US government. And the third options, which is in the monetary terms comparable to the US, would be Canada. Here we have the disadvantage that we don't have the plant over there, but we can rely on a broader customer base, and can also get Canadian government as a customer.
Great, excellent, very good. How did you find the case?
Yeah, it's a cool case. It's I a little got off by the calculation because I wanted to save time.
Yeah, you know what? You're I think it was the solution was very good. So I'm very happy. You brought up really interesting points on the qualitative side. You calculated everything right on the financial side. However, you could have saved a lot of time or quite some time if you had realized that Canada has lower revenues and higher costs. So you can cross out Canada like from the financial analysis straight away because because it has lower revenues and higher costs. You can see that directly from the tables already. You don't need to do any calculation on Canada. So this is very common in consulting, that you have a lot of data, and you're kind of tempted to use all that data and to calculate things and to have like the bottom line, to be able to compare everything in the same on the same level. But for that, you might not have the time. So sometimes it's the 80-20.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, it's the 80-20 Pareto principle, that you should like try to get to 80% of the result with 20% of the time. And of course, it might be that the non-financial side or the qualitative aspects of Canada are very good, so that we would still need to have the amount of profit Canada would make. But it's not a project of 3 months. You have only 30 minutes. So you can say profits, since profits are the main decision aspect here. We don't need to calculate it, because we see that revenues are higher in the UK and costs are lower. So between UK and Canada, it's a no-brainer. So it's this fine analysis before starting to calculate things. Do I really need to calculate it, or is there a smarter way to be able to not calculate it? That's one of the takeaways of this case, I think, for you today.
So, under regular circumstances, I'm the largest fan of using shortcuts. So myself, so if I under pressure,
exactly, you're under pressure.
The first thing I really look at is, should I really calculate it? So
exactly, and I can see that you're very good with calculations. So your math skills are really good. You're very fast, and usually it's the case when people are good at something, they are tempted to do it more than maybe necessary. But if you say you're a fan of shortcuts, then it's really a matter of being under pressure and not being able to show everything you really are capable of. So that's exactly why we're here practicing together, right?
No, it's a great example. So maybe how did you find it during the calculation? Because it was like kind of the same pattern all the time. So I explained it once with you, and then I thought, okay, it will save time if I just quickly redo the calculation for the other two options. Was it a lot of silence, or wouldn't it be in a real interview not an issue, since you can exactly see what I'm doing?
Exactly, that's very good point. So since in an actual interview I'm sitting next to you and I can see your calculations, there wouldn't have been that much of a problem, this long silence. However, if you think out loud, then you're inviting the interviewer to be with you, to stick to you, not to be tempted to take a look at his phone and to see if he got any emails from his manager or partner. So it's always better to think out loud and to invite the interviewer to the interaction, to the calculations we do. Okay. So do that. Try to do calculations out loud the whole time, and that will help me to help you to say, okay, well, is it really that much? Because once or twice you got a bit confused in the calculation, and I could help straight away, instead of only at the end say, well, that sounds too high or too low to me.
Here I wanted as well use a shortcut, because I thought, okay, we were selling 25 helicopters less in Canada, so I thought, okay, I just subtract that to keep going, and then I forgot that the costs are also higher.
Also higher. I see.
Just
But that's good.
one shortcut.
That's exactly what you should do. You have to look for ways to show that you can do calculations in a more intelligent way.
Yeah,
Every candidate should be able to be good at calculations. You're gonna show even more an edge over the other candidates if you show that you are able to smartly avoid calculations. That's even better than being fast, right? So yeah, I have a lot of good feedback points here, a lot of good habits. You have clarification questions were all very relevant, very interesting. Your early conclusion that cost is the main separator was not true in this case, but I think it's a very interesting hypothesis to start with. And your hypotheses do not need to be always true. That's why they're called hypotheses, right?
Yeah.
So really good. Very good point with the comparison of supply and demand. You are the third or fourth candidate that I'm doing this program now, but I've interviewed this, used this case already like tens of times, and only one other candidate thought of this. Okay, so revenue does not mean, or their willingness to spend money with us does not mean that we're gonna really have this money or sell those helicopters. We need to have the helicopters to sell. We need to be able to get this revenue, right? Which is only possible if we have the number of helicopters available. Very good. However, when you asked about the price, you asked about the price before you said that you would be doing this calculation or this check. And I was like, I saw it coming, but it's even better if you can say, if you had said, okay, so I would like to now only know the price so that I can compare the supply and the demand. Do we have the price? You did it first. What is the price? I told you, and then you explained why. So it's always better if you can shortly explain what you need this data for. Exactly. Switched to cost. So you were very clear when you switched in your structure. So now I'm switching to my second point of the structure. Revenues are clear now. Let's go to costs. Very good. One problem that a lot of candidates have as well is to mix up fixed costs with investment costs. That's a confusion you made as well. So you said, okay, the plan, the investment will be what I call the fixed costs, and then there'll be the variable, the recurring costs. So costs are like separated like that. There's investment costs on the one side, on the other side, there's recurring costs. So one-off and recurring costs. And under recurring, you have fixed and variable. And in this case is very good to show that because it has all of those three blocks.
Okay, yeah.
Then very good points about the qualitative side. So language and culture. It's not by chance, or it's not randomly so that all three countries speak the same language and have similar cultures. That has those three sides have been taken into consideration, definitely because of those factors as well that you mentioned. So very interesting that you mentioned that. Not a lot of people do, not a lot of candidates do mention that. The supply chain, you could have been a bit more clear or more detailed here, saying that, okay, so where do the raw material come from? We need parts. So most of today's assembly lines, they buy parts from other suppliers and they put them together, right? So where are those parts coming from? Where are our suppliers located at? So that's a very interesting question. Regulatory, you covered that, very good. So we might have problems from the US to sell to new customers maybe. If we want to sell in Europe, it could be better to be in the UK if you want to sell to France in 2 years' time or 3 years' time. How reliable are contracts? Also, how dependent we are on one customer. So if we have two customers, then one can fail and will still not be totally out of revenues. So that's a very good point. I would have structured my conclusion, my reasons why this you made this choice with points. Like first is the financial side, the profits will be maximized. Second, our client will not be completely dependent on one single customer if we're in the UK as compared to the US. And you always talked about the buffer of having capacity left, but I would see that on the other side. I would see the bright side of it. So we'll always be using our factory 100%.
Okay, yeah.
So we're not going to be losing investment costs. So I would see that on the positive side instead of on the negative. So that would be one of the third.
I had another case once where there was the only difference was that we have some extra buffer with one option, and we are completely maxed out with another option, and there it was a plus.
Good.
For not getting delayed.
But
it was a different product. It wasn't a helicopter.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely, if all other things same, all other factors the same, then of course it's better to have buffer. But if the cost of having buffer is selling less, then,
of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So so I need to go now. It was a very good case. Congratulations.